Ethan Cross walked carefully through the rocky terrain of Deathworld Leg, his boots crunching on the sharp, jagged stones beneath him. The wind howled like a living thing, carrying clouds of dust that made his eyes water. The sky was dark and heavy, and the sun barely peeked through the swirling clouds. This planet was harsh, even by frontier world standards, and only a human, or someone as stubborn as one, could survive here. Ethan had learned long ago that patience, observation, and caution were as important as strength. He paused on a ridge and scanned the valley below. From this height he could see movement, a blur of shapes darting between the rocky spires. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from awareness. Predators, he guessed, or worse. Deathworld Leg was full of surprises, and most of them did not wait politely for him to notice. A sudden scream tore through the wind, sharp and urgent. Ethan's eyes narrowed. It was not an animal, at least not one he had encountered before. The cry had a tone of fear and desperation that made his instincts flare. He dropped into a crouch, moving down the ridge toward the sound, careful to make himself as small and silent as possible. As he crested a boulder, he saw her. A figure, slender and clad in shimmering clothing that seemed almost alive with light, darted between rocks, her limbs moving with a grace that was almost otherworldly. Beside her, monstrous creatures lunged with razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes. Ethan froze for a moment, studying her movements. She was trying to defend herself, but she was clearly outmatched. He felt a surge of decision and action flow through him. Humans had a strange way of surviving in impossible circumstances. It was not just physical strength. It was timing, strategy, and a refusal to give up. He sprinted down the slope, using rocks as cover, and grabbed a sturdy branch shaped like a spear along the way. He arrived just as one of the creatures leapt toward her. With a precise thrust, he drove the branch into the beast's side. It shrieked and fell, rolling to the ground. The princess turned toward him, eyes wide, her fear mingled with surprise. "Can you defend me, human?" she called, her voice trembling but commanding. There was something in it that made Ethan stop for a heartbeat. She did not ask for help as a plea. She asked as if expecting it, testing him. Ethan nodded once, not wasting words. He positioned himself between her and the remaining creatures. There were 3 left, their movements coordinated, like they were hunting as one mind. Humans were unpredictable, and he intended to use that to his advantage. He moved swiftly, drawing the creatures' attention away from the princess. They lunged at him, but he was faster, dodging, weaving, and striking with the branch. Each motion was precise, calculated. The creatures were strong but not clever. Humans had survived tougher predators back on Earth, and he had been trained to see patterns to exploit weaknesses. One creature tried to circle behind him. Ethan twisted, grabbed a loose rock, and flung it. It hit the creature squarely, stunning it just long enough for him to drive the branch into its chest. The final one paused, hesitant now, sensing its companions falling. Ethan used the moment, rolling forward, kicking it off balance, and sending it crashing down the slope. The valley fell silent, save for the distant roar of the wind. The princess approached, her steps cautious, eyes studying him. You're strong," she said, voice softening. There was awe in her tone, mixed with curiosity. "I thought humans were weak. I never imagined," her words trailed off. Ethan shrugged, wiping sweat and dust from his brow. "Not weak, just trained. You learn fast when everything tries to kill you." His voice was calm, almost casual, but every word carried the weight of experience. Lyra, for that was clearly her name, looked around, still wary. "These creatures, they are relentless. They don't fear anything. You survive because you act, not because you run or hide." From above, he saw shadows moving along the cliffs. More predators, not just predators, there were other forms of life here, things designed to test even the toughest human. Ethan's mind raced. He could not allow Lyra to face these alone. "Stay close," he said, "and trust me, don't move unless I tell you." Ethan felt a strange sense of responsibility, a connection forming between them. He was a human trained to survive. She was an alien, royal perhaps, but out of her depth here, and somehow that made the challenge more real, more urgent. The canyon narrowed, and Ethan used it to his advantage. He moved ahead, finding a natural choke point. When the creatures appeared, he guided them into the narrow path. One by one, he used rocks, branches, and the terrain itself to trap and disarm them. Lyra watched, her admiration growing. Humans had a way of turning impossible situations to their advantage. Finally, the last creature fell, pinned under a massive stone Ethan had rolled. The canyon was silent. Lyra exhaled, relief evident on her face. "You are incredible," she said. Her voice was quiet now, more intimate. "I thought I understood strength, but you are something else entirely." That's what humans do. We fight when it counts. Watch for movement. This planet doesn't forgive mistakes. It's not always the biggest or the fastest. It's the ones who keep going when everything tells them to stop. Ethan's ears caught it immediately, a low rumble, the unmistakable sound of creatures moving, hunting. He stood and checked the terrain. More challenges were coming, but he was ready. Humans always adapted, always survived. Lyra stood beside him, her posture straightening. "Then I will trust you," she said, her voice firm now. "But you must teach me. I need to understand how you think, how you survive." The alien princess had no idea of the strength she had called upon, and Ethan, for the first time in a long while, felt the weight of responsibility, not just to survive, but to protect someone who depended on him. The valley below stirred with movement, unseen eyes watching, and Ethan tightened his grip on his makeshift spear. Deathworld Leg was not done testing them yet, but he was human. And humans did not back down. The night came, dark and full of dangers, but together they faced it. And in the heart of that unforgiving world, a bond was forming. A bond between a human who had learned to endure anything and an alien princess who had never imagined such strength could exist. And somewhere in the shadows, the creatures waited, unaware that the human before them was not just another prey. He was a force they could not predict, and that unpredictability was about to change everything on Deathworld Leg. The night on Deathworld Leg was merciless. Ethan crouched beside Lyra, keeping watch as the wind howled through the jagged rocks and the shadows shifted unnaturally. The creatures they had fought earlier were gone, or at least temporarily, and the valley was silent, but silence on this planet was never safe. Lyra shivered slightly, pulling her shimmering cloak tighter around herself. "I did not think a human could survive here," she admitted, her voice low, almost a whisper. "And now I see why. You are different. I will need to learn that. You cannot protect me forever, can you?" Lyra listened intently, her mind absorbing every detail. Humans survived because they observed, he explained. They thought ahead. They planned for the worst and used every advantage the land offered. When the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Ethan rose and stretched. "We move. There's a place I know, a small canyon with water and shelter. It's a few miles from here, but safer than staying in the open." Ethan led the way, choosing paths that minimized exposure to predators while allowing them to travel efficiently. Lyra followed, learning to move like him, quietly, deliberately, always aware of the world around them. Midway through their trek, they encountered a shallow ravine filled with strange, pulsating plants. Ethan paused, crouched low, and examined them. "These are not just plants," he said. "They react to movement and heat. If we touch them carelessly, they can release toxins or trap us. We go around." He scanned the ridges and saw movement, fast, deliberate, and intelligent, not animals, soldiers. The alien warlord who had been hunting Lyra's family had sent scouts. "Stay close," Ethan whispered. "They are not here by accident. They know we are coming." He found a small crevice just ahead, deep enough to hide them from view. "We wait. Patience is part of survival. We don't fight unless we must." The soldiers moved on, and the two of them waited until the sound of footsteps faded. Ethan exhaled quietly. "They are smart, but not as smart as humans when we plan. They think they control this world, but they forget one thing: humans are unpredictable. Even my guards would not think like that." Satisfied, he allowed Lyra to rest while he prepared traps for potential threats. Ethan used rocks, sticks, and natural features of the canyon to create warning systems, simple but effective. If something approached, he would know before it reached them. Lyra watched in fascination as he worked, realizing the depth of human ingenuity. "They are clever," she murmured, gesturing toward the traps. "You're kind, you make the world your ally." She listened intently, absorbing his stories of deserts, frozen wastelands, and predator-filled jungles back on Earth. She realized that human strength was not only physical, it was mental, emotional, and relentless in the face of danger. The afternoon passed uneventfully, but Ethan never let his guard down. As the sun began to set, he noticed movement across the canyon walls, a group of creatures that seemed to be hunting by smell and sound. Not ordinary predators, these were Deathworld Leg's apex hunters, fast, intelligent, and relentless. "Get inside," Ethan commanded. He led Lyra into a narrow alcove, crouching low. "We cannot outrun them. We need strategy." When the creatures lunged, Ethan and Lyra moved with precision. Ethan's traps activated first, tangling one in a net of vines and rocks. He drew the creature's attention, allowing Lyra to throw stones and sticks, disrupting their attacks. The coordination between them grew as the fight continued, Lyra learning from Ethan's actions, imitating his moves instinctively. Finally, after what felt like hours, the creatures retreated, frustrated by the humans' unpredictability and clever use of terrain. Lyra looked at Ethan with awe. I never imagined humans could survive against such things. Alone, I would have been killed immediately. That is what makes humans dangerous in ways others cannot predict. It was alive, active, and adaptable. Teach me more, she said quietly. I want to survive like you human, not with machines, not with armies, with my mind and body. Survival is not just about fighting. It's about thinking, learning, and never giving up. For Lyra, the night was a revelation. She had always believed her species' strength came from technology and armies. Now she saw that human strength was different. It came from within, from intelligence, adaptability, and courage under pressure. She began to understand why her people feared humans, even respected them quietly in legends. When dawn finally broke, the valley bathed in light, Ethan and Lyra prepared to move again. The journey ahead would be more dangerous. The warlord's soldiers would not give up, and Deathworld Leg itself seemed to conspire against them with every step. But together they had learned something important. Humans were not just survivors, they were forces that shaped the world around them. Lyra looked at Ethan, determination in her eyes. I will follow your lead, human. I will learn. I will survive. And the more you understand it, the stronger you will become. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the warlord's forces were gathering. But for now, Ethan and Lyra were ready. Ready to face whatever Deathworld Leg threw at them, relying not on machines or armies, but on intelligence, courage, and the unpredictable power of human strength. The day was hot and merciless on Deathworld Leg, the sun burning through the thin, turbulent clouds. Ethan led Lyra along a narrow ridge, the wind slicing at their faces like a blade. They had left the canyon behind, moving toward a dense forest of jagged alien trees that offered some cover. Every step was careful, calculated, as the terrain here was unforgiving and danger could come from any angle. Lyra walked beside him, her eyes alert. I still cannot believe how you can read the land like this, she said, panting slightly. Even the creatures, even the soldiers, they cannot hide from you. That's how humans survive places like this. They are ahead, too many for a direct fight. We need to be clever. Ethan whispered instructions to Lyra, showing her where to hide, how to move silently, and how to use the terrain to their advantage. She followed him, heart racing but trusting his every move. When the soldiers reached the ravine, Ethan acted. He loosened rocks and rolled them carefully, not to hit the soldiers directly but to create confusion. One scout slipped and fell, grabbing onto a jagged tree for balance. Others turned, shouting, trying to organize. Ethan used the moment to attack strategically, throwing rocks and sticks to disrupt their formation while remaining hidden. Lyra watched in awe as Ethan moved with precision, predicting the soldiers' reactions before they even acted. His movements were deliberate, every action a tool, every step a strategy. She realized that human strength was not just physical, it was mental, tactical, and fearless under pressure. When the soldiers recovered, Ethan was ready. He lunged from his hiding spot, striking one with a precise kick and sending him tumbling down the slope. He used the confusion to guide the others toward the trap he had set, a pit concealed under loose foliage. Two of the soldiers fell into it, struggling to climb out as Ethan kept them disoriented from above. Lyra, emboldened by Ethan's confidence, joined in. She picked up a branch and swung it expertly, knocking weapons from the soldiers' hands and creating openings for Ethan to exploit. She felt exhilarated, realizing that with his guidance she could fight alongside him, not just follow. The final soldier remaining drew a blaster, firing wildly. Ethan ducked and rolled, closing the distance between them. With a swift maneuver, he disarmed the soldier, holding the weapon at his throat. Enough, Ethan said calmly, his voice carrying authority. Leave this place, or you will not leave at all. You make the impossible seem easy. Ethan taught Lyra how to read signs in the environment, how the movement of leaves could indicate a predator, how the scent of the air could signal approaching danger, how even the position of shadows could be used to hide or detect threats. Lyra absorbed every lesson, her admiration growing with each step. As they reached a clearing, the sound of rushing water caught their attention. A small river wound through the forest, its current fast and clear. Ethan signaled Lyra to stay back as he approached the water cautiously, testing for ambushes or predators. Finding none, he motioned for her to follow. They drank and rested briefly, the cool water refreshing after hours of careful movement. But even here on the riverbank, Ethan remained vigilant. Humans survived because they never let their guard down completely, he reminded her silently. Lyra nodded, beginning to internalize this lesson. Suddenly, the forest trembled with a low, ominous sound. Ethan's eyes narrowed. From the trees, large predators emerged, faster and deadlier than any they had encountered before. Their skin was armored and their teeth were sharp enough to pierce steel. "They are testing us," Ethan whispered. "Stay behind me and follow my lead." Hours passed in a blur of action and survival. Ethan guided Lyra through the chaos, teaching her how to anticipate attacks, exploit weaknesses, and remain calm under pressure. Finally, exhausted but victorious, they managed to drive the predators away. Lyra fell to the ground, panting, her heart racing from adrenaline. I can't believe we survived that," she said, awe in her voice. "Even your stories, they didn't prepare me for this." Ethan reinforced the entrance with rocks and vines, creating barriers that would delay predators. Lyra watched him work, fascinated by his resourcefulness. "You are incredible," she said quietly. "I have never seen anyone fight like you, survive like you, think like you. You are different from anyone I have ever met. You learn to survive or you don't survive. It's simple, but it takes everything you have. Deathworld Leg will test you every step of the way, but I believe you can do it." Lyra absorbed everything, realizing that survival was not just about strength or weapons. It was about intelligence, awareness, and adaptability. By dawn, the forest was alive with sounds of movement. Ethan and Lyra were ready. The warlords' forces were still pursuing them, but Ethan had learned to anticipate their tactics, to use the environment to control the battlefield. He looked at Lyra, seeing the determination in her eyes. She was no longer just a princess in danger. She was a student, a partner, someone learning to survive alongside him. "We move carefully," Ethan whispered. "The warlord will not give up, but we will use our wits." Humans survive not because they are the strongest, but because they think, adapt, and never surrender. As they stepped into the forest, moving with quiet precision, the shadows seemed to shift around them. The world was dangerous, the warlord relentless, and the predators always hungry. But together, human and alien, they faced the challenges with courage, intelligence, and determination. And somewhere ahead, the warlord's scouts were moving closer, unaware that the human they hunted was not only capable of surviving Deathworld Leg, but of turning every danger into an advantage. The legend of human strength was about to be tested, and the alien princess would witness its full power. The forest of Deathworld Leg was thick, tangled, and full of hidden dangers. Ethan led Lyra carefully, his eyes scanning every shadow, every movement, every sound. The sun was high and the heat was oppressive, but humans had a way of enduring extremes that few other species could match. Lyra moved beside him, silent and focused, a student in the art of survival. They had been traveling for hours, avoiding the warlord's patrols, setting traps, and using the terrain to their advantage. Ethan had taught her to read the signs of the land, to notice subtle shifts in the wind, the rustling of leaves, even the faint smell of approaching predators or soldiers. Lyra had learned quickly, absorbing lessons with the sharp focus of someone who knew that survival depended on understanding every detail. As they moved through a narrow passage between towering cliffs, Ethan froze and raised a hand. He crouched low and peered ahead. Lyra followed his gaze. The warlord's forces were here, more organized than the scouts they had encountered before. A dozen soldiers, heavily armored, moving in formation with weapons ready, eyes scanning the forest. "They've found us," Ethan whispered. "We cannot outrun them, but we can outthink them." He spotted natural choke points, rocks they could use for traps, vines for snares, and narrow ledges where only one soldier could pass at a time. "We fight smart," he said. "We use the land, we turn their strength against them." Every step was deliberate, every move calculated. Ethan had fought creatures and humans alike on frontier worlds, and he knew how to turn danger into advantage. As the soldiers moved closer, Ethan set his first trap. A camouflaged pit lined with sharp stakes, concealed beneath loose foliage. He directed Lyra to distract the soldiers by throwing small rocks, drawing their attention just enough for them to step into the pit. 2 soldiers fell, struggling to climb out as the others hesitated, unsure of the terrain. "Good," Ethan whispered. "Keep them off balance, don't let them organize." She kicked rocks down slopes, knocked over branches, and shouted from hidden positions to confuse the soldiers. Together, they became a coordinated force, human ingenuity amplified by trust and strategy. The remaining soldiers advanced cautiously, but Ethan had already planned their path. He led them toward a narrow canyon where the walls rose steep and steep, leaving little room for maneuver. He positioned himself at a vantage point above the soldiers, using his knowledge of physics and terrain. With a precise push, he sent a large boulder rolling down the slope, forcing the soldiers to scatter. The rock struck one soldier, sending him tumbling and blocking the path for others. Lyra watched, amazed. "You think of everything," she said quietly. "Even the cliffs themselves are weapons in your hands." Each soldier became vulnerable as he or she moved forward. Ethan struck swiftly, using hand-to-hand combat to disable the first, while Lyra used a vine to trip the second. The remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do next. "Remember," Ethan whispered, "never underestimate your opponent, but never overestimate them either. Control the battlefield. Control the fight." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. "Good work. That is how humans fight, not with numbers, not with brute force, but with intelligence, observation, and timing." The warlord would not give up so easily. He had underestimated Ethan once, but he would soon learn that human ingenuity was not so easily defeated. As the sun began to set, Ethan and Lyra moved toward a hidden plateau overlooking the warlord's camp. From their vantage point, they could see the soldiers regrouping, preparing for another assault. Ethan studied the scene carefully. "We need to force him to come to us," he said. "Humans survive by controlling the battlefield, by predicting their enemies' moves." Ethan positioned Lyra in a concealed spot where she could observe without being seen, instructing her on when and how to act. Together, they prepared a plan that relied on precision, timing, and the environment itself. When the warlord's forces advanced at night, Ethan and Lyra were ready. The first soldiers to reach the plateau triggered traps that sent rocks tumbling down slopes, disorienting and injuring them. Ethan used the chaos to strike, moving swiftly and efficiently. Lyra followed his lead, attacking from hidden positions and using the terrain to her advantage. The warlord himself appeared, his eyes wide with disbelief as he saw his forces falter. He had underestimated the human. Ethan met him calmly, studying his movements, noting his weaknesses. When the warlord lunged, Ethan sidestepped, using the momentum against him and throwing him off balance. Lyra attacked with a precise strike, forcing the warlord to retreat momentarily. "You are stronger than I imagined," the warlord growled. "But this is not over. It is over if you underestimate humans again. We survive because we think, because we adapt, because we never give up. That is strength you cannot measure with weapons or numbers." Together, they turned the battlefield against the warlord, demonstrating the full extent of human strategy and adaptability. By dawn, the warlord's forces were in retreat. The battlefield was quiet, the coast clear, but Ethan and Lyra stood victorious. Lyra looked at Ethan, admiration and respect shining in her eyes. "I have never seen such strength," she said softly. "Not just in battle, but in mind and spirit. You are truly extraordinary. Not because of weapons or technology, but because of you." By the time they rested again, a bond had formed between them, more than teacher and student, more than protector and protected. They had become partners, united by experience, trust, and the shared understanding that survival depended on intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Ethan looked out over the forest, his eyes scanning the horizon. The warlord was still a threat, but for now they had won. Lyra stood beside him, stronger, wiser, and more confident. Together they faced the challenges of Deathworld Leg with courage, skill, and the indomitable power of human strength. And somewhere in the shadows, the warlord watched, realizing for the first time that humans were not just survivors. They were a force that could not be predicted, controlled, or defeated by conventional means. The true legend of human strength was becoming clear, and the alien princess had witnessed it firsthand. The morning light spread slowly across Deathworld Leg, touching the broken ground, the twisted trees, and the quiet remains of battle. The forest was calm now, almost peaceful, as if the planet itself was watching Ethan and Lyra with cautious respect. The warlord's forces had pulled back during the night, leaving behind abandoned gear and broken morale. Ethan stood on a rocky rise, scanning the horizon. He did not relax. Humans who survived long enough learned one rule above all others. Calm did not mean safety. It only meant the danger had learned to wait. Lyra stepped beside him. She looked different now. Her posture was straighter, her eyes sharper, her movements confident. The frightened princess who had begged for protection days ago was gone. In her place stood someone forged by Deathworld Leg itself. "They are retreating," she said. "Not fleeing, retreating. That makes him dangerous, but it also means he won't rush again. Not just on the battlefield, but in the mind." The path was long and dangerous, but now Lyra walked without hesitation. She spotted threats before Ethan pointed them out. She avoided unstable ground, chose smart routes, and even set small traps of her own when they stopped to rest. Ethan noticed everything. He said nothing, but inside he felt a quiet pride. Humans didn't just survive, they taught survival. And once someone learned it, they were never the same again. As they approached the beacon site, the air changed. The forest grew quieter, too quiet. Ethan slowed and raised his hand. Lyra stopped instantly. Movement echoed ahead, heavy footsteps, armored, controlled. "The warlord," Lyra whispered. Ethan nodded. "He wants a final answer." The beacon stood at the center, half-buried and worn by time. Across the clearing, the warlord emerged, flanked by his remaining elite guards. He looked different now, less confident, more cautious. His eyes stayed locked on Ethan. "So," the warlord said slowly, "the human still lives. Humans don't die easily. It just lets weak things believe it is." But they hesitated. Every movement felt like a trap. Every shadow felt alive. That hesitation was enough. Ethan used the terrain, knocking over a pillar to split the group. Lyra disabled another guard using a maneuver Ethan had taught her days earlier. The fight was fast, controlled, and decisive. Soon, only the warlord remained. He stood still, breathing heavily, staring at Ethan with something close to disbelief. "You are not just a soldier," he said. "You are a disaster. I choose strength earned, not inherited." "It will take time," she said. Ethan nodded. "Time we can handle. Humans understand this. Then your legend will spread." That's enough. But somewhere beyond this planet, stories were already spreading. Stories of a human who walked through impossible worlds. A human who turned death into strategy. A human who reminded the galaxy that strength was not built in labs or forged in factories. It was born on harsh worlds, sharpened by struggle, and carried quietly by humans who refused to fall. On Deathworld Leg, the wind howled once more, but it was no longer a challenge. It was acknowledgement.